Welcome. It's the first primary forum in I don't know how long we've had, but the great part is we have one. We have a lot of people running. And that makes us happy. So I'm going to hand this to Kent real quick, and he's just going to go through some quick housekeeping things.
Hey there. First off, bathrooms. If you go through the double doors back here and to the right, there's restrooms right back there. In case of an emergency, there is an exit through those double doors and to the left, and just go out towards the street there, or through this door also. There are fire extinguishers in here and a fire alarm, if something were to happen. And I'll call 911 if we have any kind of an emergency. If anybody starts feeling ill and needs to step out, make sure you tell somebody next to you that you're not feeling well, then you just need to step outside for a minute so that somebody will know to come looking for you if you don't come back in. Okay. I think that's it. Oh yeah, since I am the treasurer, we have these nice little envelopes up here that you can put money in and give to me. So I'll gladly accept cash, check, credit cards. We can do all of it.
We can't take Bitcoin now.
Basically, we need like some Bitcoin.
Yeah, maybe so. Okay, so real quick, everybody, welcome today. I'm Don Larma. I'm the Cabarrus County Democrat Party Chair. And we're excited today because we have a forum, because we have two primaries coming up and early voting starts tomorrow. So basically, the format of this is going to be, the first part is going to be our District 83 candidates. Well, wait a minute first. Before we get started, we got to decide who we're going to throw out. Senah.
Anybody doing opposition?
Yeah.
She's got experience.
Seriously, you're a Republican, and you're welcome. If you want to come up to the front, I'll make you a seat up in the front too. We're all good with that. We're equal opportunity. So, if the candidates can't say anything in here, they can't be heard everywhere, they don't need to be running for office. That's right. So, gonna go ahead and hand this over, and the way it's gonna work is Mark Plemmons, Independent Tribune editor, has graciously agreed to be our moderator. Kent Edstuck is going to be our timer. He's really good as a timekeeper. He mostly keeps us on time on the board. And he has these little signs. Stop. Now, here's what's really cool. He also has a PA base. If you keep talking, you'll stop anyway. See? How y'all like that? So, there will be roughly 8 questions. They'll get a minute and a half to respond. We'll have a 15-minute break, and then we will switch over to the District 8 North Carolina U.S. House Forum. So that's pretty much I have. I don't think there's anybody need to throw out. The way we're going to do this is I put you guys up here in ballot order, I think. Did I get it right? Thank you. And so question 1, you guys can either flip a quarter or decide who wants to go first on this, and then when you're done, you hand the mic to the next person. So who wants to answer the first question? All right.
There you are.
Yeah, we do have.
Oh, wait. Forgot
Okay.
about one thing. See,
Yeah.
y'all, I'm sleep deprived. They each get
30 seconds.
30 seconds to give an intro. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Senah. And we all need to do a pledge of allegiance.
30 seconds. Yeah. You can intro.
Y'all, it's primary. All right, you want to do the next one?
To
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, they get 30 seconds to do your intro, Ken.
So 30-second intro from each candidate. We'll start with you, Earle. We'll come down the line. So 30 seconds.
Hello, my name is Earle Schecter. I know most of you, and most of you know my name. My wife and I retired to Concord My 2 daughters, their husbands, 7 grandchildren, all live in Concord. I've never been in a Democratic primary because I understand that the 3 of us share the same views on the issues. I feel I'm the best candidate because I have real hands-on experience. I've been on boards, but that's not hands-on experience. I've been a state probation officer, I've been a counselor in a high school, and I've owned 5 retail businesses. I know the economy and how to create jobs. I know the criminal justice system. Oh, I'm sorry.
So the important guy's down here with the clock.
Hi, I'm Gail Young. I'm running for House District 83. I want to thank you guys for coming out tonight. I really appreciate the fact that you want to learn more about the candidates. And I hope by the end of the night that you will have learned enough about me that I have earned your vote on May 8th. Thank you for coming.
Good evening. How is everyone? My name is Senah Andrews, and I am the only candidate here tonight who is poised to take back our seat, our Democratic seat in the North Carolina General Assembly. Our District 83 deserves leadership and a representative who will represent all the people and not just the chosen few. Our district deserves courageous leadership, and our district deserves to have a representative who not only understands the issues, but has lived on the front line of these issues. Thank you.
Okay, I forgot something real quick. Eric and I were on the phone at 1 a.m. last night, okay? Cut me some slack. So we had some audience rules, and that we asked that nobody video the form. We want to make sure that the form is not used out of context. We are videoing it, and we own the copyright and ownership of it, and any photos in here, and we will be posting it online. We also want to ask that because we're going to try to stay on a tight time frame, that you hold your applause for candidates until they do their closing remarks. Even though I know it's hard, people get excited and everything like that. But when you guys clap, then they have to wait, and those seconds add up. So, everybody's got to maintain decorum, and nobody be disruptive. And if you are, then we actually will make you leave. But otherwise, we're not making anybody leave. All right, so this goes over to Earle.
All right, we're going to, just to let the audience know, there were rules given out to each of the candidates, so they're aware of that. They were given 20 questions, and I'll be picking approximately 8 of those questions. So they've had a chance to kind of formulate some thoughts. I know everybody felt like they were rushed in that 30 seconds, so the first question we're going to do, with 1.5 minutes for each of you to respond, what 5 things do you want voters to know most about you? What 5 things?
The 5 things I would like voters to know about me is some of the things I alluded to in my opening. My real hands-on experience. I can't emphasize this enough. I know the public education system after 10 years of being a counselor. I know the criminal justice system after being a state probation officer and an investigator for the Office of Probation. Having owned 5 retail businesses, I know what it means to hire people and create jobs and create business. Those really are the important things I think people should know about me. I have a bachelor's degree in labor studies. I'm a firm believer in public education. And of course, the incumbent doesn't consider it a priority at all. In fact, the General Assembly doesn't consider it a priority. You must know that about me. I feel strongly about these things. I'm also working on the court. The court building has over 300 inmates in it, and many of them are having their rights, their constitutional rights violated. And I know I'm the only person in Concord who's trying to do anything about it, and you'll hear about it in the newspaper.
Okay, so the number one thing I think that you should know about me is I'm Christian. I live by that value system. And so for me, it is really important that we feed the poor, that we take care of the elderly, that we take care of the orphans, and that we welcome the immigrant into our land, because that is fundamentally what I believe we are instructed to do. Second thing is I'm an activist. I spent the past year being active about the voter suppression that I saw occurring in North Carolina and raising those issues with our representatives in Raleigh. It fell on deaf ears, but I still went and raised those issues with our representatives. Third, I'm an artist. I have put my art career on hold while I am running for office. I really love doing oil paintings and pastels too. So, but it's worth it to me if I can represent the people of our district. Fourth, oh gosh, I can't remember what I was going to say. Well, let's say I volunteer a lot in the community. My parents always instructed us to give back to the community. And so I currently work for Present Age Ministries, which is a human trafficking group, and to stop sexual trafficking of young teenage girls. And I am the only candidate with governmental experience. I have 26 and a half years of working with Mecklenburg County at a high enough level that I understand how government works. Thank you.
Well, I'm following two very accomplished people, and I appreciate the chance to share a little bit. I'm going to go in a little bit different direction, a little bit lighthearted. I am the mother of 3 very unique, wild and crazy kids who have grown up to be adults. And not only am I a mother of those children, but I'm also a mother of 3 dogs, 2 puppies that are golden doodles and are systematically dismantling my yard as we speak. In addition to family life, which is really important to me, my husband's over here, right there. I think that what I'd like you to know is that I have a silly side and I have a serious side. And in my work in the community, I have to use both. I have to create balance. And with that, I've dealt with really, really serious things in our community, and I've had to find a way to really find the hope in what I'm doing in our community. So I have volunteered. I have worked in the community for 22 years. Those are things you'll hear about. But I want you to know that with all the serious stuff that I've been dealing with, we still travel, we still have fun, we enjoy our family time. Thank you.
All right, next question, we'll start with Ms. Young in the middle. And this one is, what do you consider the biggest issue facing the 83rd District, and what will you do to work on that?
The biggest issue I think facing the 83rd District is education and the lack of funding for education. I think that the way that the state legislature currently funds for schools, it's probably means that we get the short end of the stick. So if I go to Raleigh, I'm going to try to advocate that we do a different structure in funding. I think we have some issues around where to locate facilities and how to build facilities. I think we need to pay teachers more, make it a competitive salary so that we can keep our teachers. I think we need to invest in our per pupil average because it's very low. So teachers need to have the supplies that they need in order to get the job done. So education is to me the number one thing. I still have time?
Sure.
Well, anyway, this is my first time of doing this, so it's a little nerve-wracking to be timed. So I will try to pace it better in the future. But thanks for hanging with me.
Ms. Andrews?
Oh, okay. I look at the challenges facing our community in a holistic approach, in the same way that I do in my therapy practice and throughout my career. I don't look at issues in individual silos. So what I'd like to do is paint the picture of a three-legged stool. Education being one leg, healthcare being the second leg, and the third leg being our economy and our need for jobs in this area. You know, when you kick one leg out from under that stool, the whole stool collapses, or at least gets really rocky. So what I like to do is to approach our community issues with this holistic three-legged stool idea. And one of the things that I think is really important, and part of my message is we've got to break down barriers to build up people. In each of those three legs, in each of those areas in our community, we have barriers that we need to address. And a barrier, an example would be in healthcare, if we don't have transportation, we can't get to the doctor. So that means we have to pay attention to infrastructure. If we have education and it is a problem to get to school, we have to address that. So we're going to take that kind of approach. Thank you.
Of course, I agree that we have to take a wider view of the problems. I'd like to talk about public education. As I said, I was a counselor at a high school, and my title was Counselor for At-Risk Students. This was a poor dairy farm community, very poor. It happened to be in upstate New York, where the average temperature 6 months of the year is probably below zero. I had students who had no heat, no water, and no food. Many students. Imagine having no heat when it's 10 below zero. My problem in dealing with these students was, first I had to find out why they're not coming to school and why they're not doing well. So I started making the home visits to every one of their houses, and I saw the reality of their lives. A 15-year-old who is on a dairy farm, he gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do the chores. Then he drags himself to school. Imagine trying to be a good student under those conditions. Impossible. Impossible. I created a medical facility because most of these poor kids were sick all the time. I actually wrote a grant, got $100,000. We had a medical facility built. Due to me. I networked with every social service agency. I solved every problem I could. Thank you.
All right, the next question, we'll start with Ms. Andrews. The question is, what will you do to support local business and small business in growing them in the 83rd District?
Great question. I am a small business owner in this community, and so it's really important that we keep in mind as we look at growth and expansion in the community and trying to attract large businesses into our community that will have maybe a larger impact in terms of jobs. We can't let the small business owner be forgotten. They need to have a seat at the table and a voice in Raleigh, as well as a voice here in the community. Our community has been built on small business owners, and you can see it even today. Just go down to the Boys and Girls Club on Pancake Day, and what you're going to see is a room full of community members and community leaders all working together, and probably one of those small business owners is going to be dressed in an apron, flipping pancakes and serving up really what I would consider to be their love of the community and their love of children. We must protect that, and we must protect them because they make such a difference every single day in our community. And I will be a voice for small business owners, not only locally, using my influence, but I will also be someone who will support legislation that will support our small business owners. Thank you.
Okay, as I said, I owned 5 retail businesses. The first thing that has to be done in the state of North Carolina is to increase the minimum wage. Ours is a consumer-driven economy. Therefore, I think it's about 70% of our economy is consumer-driven. Therefore, we have to get more money in circulation. One of the ways we do that is to increase the minimum wage. That sort of creates a chain reaction. And I saw it, I lived it, I did it. Pay higher salaries, more money in circulation, more people hired, and then more people hired, more money in circulation. It's a chain reaction. We have to also make sure that the food stamp program, that puts money in circulation. I always tell people, find the CEO of Food Lion and ask him or her, how do you like food stamps? And they would say, it's 20% of our business, we love it. I've thought about this a lot. I've worked for years. I know what it takes to create and to establish a better economy and within our community. Most people work at jobs in small businesses, not large. Thank you.
Well, I went to the Chamber's legislative breakfast to find out what their issues were for the legislature coming up. And it kind of fell into 2 areas from what I could discern. One was they wanted an educated, available workforce. They need people who are skilled to be able to come in and work jobs. And so they were really focused on how do we get more skilled workers, how do we compete to get those skilled workers, and how does having those skilled workers help us to bring new business to our community. They were really concerned with things like having the programs where students can be dually enrolled in their high school and in community college. They were also very concerned with having students the opportunity to be apprentices so that they could build their skills and develop the skills that they needed to be contributors in the workforce. And they really wanted to stress it not only being college level, but trades and skills as well. The second issue that they had was the high cost of health care. And so I do think the legislature needs to cover that. I think we could look at state exchange rate programs, because there's 10 states that are currently doing that themselves. If we did that, we could help them very much by negotiating with insurance companies to get the best rates for our citizens.
All right, our next question, we'll start here with Mr. Schecter. And this one is, I think we can all agree that there's a great partisan divide in Raleigh right now. That nobody wants to work together. How would you reach across the aisle to try to make some of those things happen? How do you work to compromise? And what areas do you see where you can work together?
Well, again, one of the areas, since I have a business background, I know there are common denominators for the other side, so-called, and our side to come to some sort of agreement. Let me think for a second. How else to, again, business, it's difficult because there is such a wall, and it shouldn't be. We are all Americans. I hate to create a sermon. But we should work together, and we've lost sight of that. Basically, different groups have different priorities, but the important priorities are always the same. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Jobs, the economy, public education, rights, women's rights. Voting, increasing Medicaid for the approximately 300,000 people who are eligible But our General Assembly decided they just, for whatever reason, they never disclosed it, they won't create the exchange. So 300,000 people living in North Carolina are eligible for Medicaid, but don't have it. But we have to come to grips with these things.
I think what I would do to work across the aisle with the Republican side is to really try to focus on what our needs are rather than advocate for the positions that we think will solve it. I think if you really focus on what's underlying positions and what are the needs and what are the concerns that you have, that we probably share a lot of the same concerns between both sides. We just have different ways of solving those problems. So I would hope to actually focus more on understanding each other and understanding what our needs are so that we could maybe create a solution that we haven't either side thought of yet, but that would work for everyone. Some of the things I think that are easy to come to agreement on with the other side at this point would be like the gaming halls, shutting those down, I think would be an easy one. I'm not sure why extension of Medicaid isn't, because it's such a boost to the economy, but I think that should be something. I think they'll come to agreement on opioid addiction and some of the things that we can do to treat that in our state. The areas that I'm not interested in negotiating are things that really relate to improved health care and improved education, and I'm not interested in gerrymandering districts. So I really, the vote is sacred to me, and we really need to have one voice equals one vote. So that's not on the table for us to compromise on gerrymandering.
As a psychologist, it is very common to have people come into my office who have opposing views, hurt feelings, a lot of anger in the room, and sometimes they're not even talking to one another. And so I have used my skill set for 25 years in my career to help people get the conversation started. The way you do that is you start with respect. Everyone in the room needs to know that their opinions are respected, even if we don't agree. We have to create space in order for conversations to begin. And that means that we have to listen, but listen not to respond. Listen to learn. We have to learn from one another. We have to understand each other's stories. We have to understand why you believe what you believe. There's always a story attached. And if you can respect the story, then you can move from that story to perhaps a compromise that would allow you to move forward with new solutions. So we've got to have respect, we've got to listen to learn, and we have to understand the underlying stories so that we can move forward together. And I have a commitment to do that. I've always done that. I've always worked across the aisle, and I'll continue. Thank you.
Next question, we'll start with Ms. Young. And across our state, across Cabarrus County, we've seen a wide gap as far as income, wealth. What would you do to try to close that gap and to help those on the lower ends?
Okay, at that same legislative breakfast, I heard someone on the panel talk about having cut unemployment in half, and how that cutting unemployment in half had resulted in also reducing unemployment. People had gone back to work. And they didn't allow questions. If they'd allowed questions, I would have said, excuse me, but why is it that you have cut unemployment in half and yet poverty is still increasing? Because I think that's the situation that we're in. I think people are underemployed. I think we have to look at minimum wage and raising the minimum wage, and I think we need to have a goal of having a living wage. Someone should be able to work a 40-hour-a-week job and take care of their family and have time to spend with their family. Right now, I've talked to too many people as I talk to voters that are having to work 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. So I think there's a huge disparity in terms of wealth in the county. I think some of the wealthier individuals the way the tax program is set up, probably are not paying as much as they could to make those services more available. I would like to think the businesses would step forward and offer to pay minimum wage or raise the minimum wage and get it to a living wage on their own. I doubt that will happen. So I think we need a plan when we get to the legislature on how to increase the minimum wage over time so it doesn't have a devastating effect to small business, but people can still live.
I think in this way.
Was this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll go to,
All right.
I'm not good at juggling, I'm
I'm
sorry.
not good at jumping. You put me on that.
I agree with a lot of what Gail Young has said. I think that we can all agree that we need to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. I agree that we need to be sure that people are employed, being able to work just one job. I had this discussion recently. I had the good fortune to be invited down for an interview with the AFL-CIO, and I was recently endorsed by them. And partly because of my passion for helping people get back on their feet after a job loss. I was working as on faculty as an instructor at Cabarrus Community College at the time that Pilatex closed. That was a transformational time for this community, and it was certainly one for me. I got to watch, listen, learn, and often cry with my students who'd had the rug just ripped right out from under them. So we have to address the devastation that took place in this community that we're still reeling from a decade later. And we have got to not pull down those who are thriving economically, but lift up those who are not. You know, we want a prosperous community for all members of our community. Thank you.
Repeat the question.
We have a wide income gap and wealth gap, and the, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. You know, when I talk to various groups of voters, I too see the reality of so many people's lives. 2 or 3 minimum wage jobs doesn't even cut it. No benefits. This is the life so many of our fellow citizens in Cabarrus County are leading. Try to send kids to school. Can't do it. Very difficult. How about clean clothes? The most basic things that we take for granted. People working minimum wage jobs just don't have the access to it. So that, of course, has to be the priority in terms of, I've said it before, we have to increase the minimum wage. There are various programs. For example, there was a time when the Department of Labor would say to somebody, a business person, if you hire this ex-convict, we'll pay half his salary. That was terrific. I even took advantage of that program. Why can't we do that here? Mr. Jones, you can't afford to pay $15 an hour for your employees. How about if we pay half of it? Then Mr. Jones says, of course.
We'll start the next question with Ms. Andrews.
Okay.
Of course, in 2011, we saw a beginning of drastic changes to the tax code in North Carolina, and they've gone even deeper since then as far as some of the tax cuts and spending priorities. What do you think of those changes? What changes would you like to make?
Oh, boy. Okay. That's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
It's a tough one. We have moved from a graduated tax to a flat tax, and it's kind of turned things upside down. The majority of people who are paying tax in North Carolina are our lowest wage earners, that percentage. And our highest earning members of our community are paying nothing or next to nothing. Given the fact that our taxes are really investments in essential aspects of our community like education and special education programs, we have an unsustainable path. I don't see a lot good in, I was racking my brain because the question originally was, what do you like and what do you don't like? And I just struggled with, what do I like about it? I think we've got to revisit moving back to a graduated tax. And I think we've got to have a mental mind shift away from taxation being a burden to taxation being an investment in our most precious resource, which is the people of North Carolina. Thank you.
I always like to use the word reality. The reality in our state of North Carolina is the basic reason that so many programs are starved is because the top corporations, top individual earners, are not paying their fair share of taxes. You just can't sustain it. So programs are cut. Here's a little factoid. There's 100 counties in North Carolina. Can anybody tell me which of those 100 counties gets the least amount of public education funding in the whole state? Cabarrus County. Somebody from the Board of Education said, "Earle, you're wrong. We're 99th. I said, does that make a difference? 99 or 100? Fair share of taxes. Somebody has to pay. They're not going to do it willingly. I hate to sound like a socialist, Bernie Sanders, who I admire. They're not going to just pay. These people are not. We have to regain control of the General Assembly. We already have a Democratic governor. That's the only way it's going to be done. Reality.
Tell me when. Oh, we're good to go. Okay. I was promised a tax cut. You were promised a tax cut. How many of you actually saw your taxes cut? Mine actually increased. So I don't think they were honest with us whenever they decided that they would do that flat rate. The effect of it is the poorest among us pay the most for the services that we have, and that's not fair. I think it gets down to how you define fair. I think the Republicans define fair in that you treat the dollar the same way. I think I define fair in that the people proportionately pay for services rather than everybody paying the same amount of dollars. It costs a lot more for me to buy a loaf of bread than it costs for the guy who's making $1 million to buy that loaf of bread. So I think that's out of whack. I think the effects of that being out of whack is what's causing us to not have money to invest in infrastructure. I think it's what's causing us to have to end up being 35th in the country in terms of education. So we have to generate money in order to provide the essential services that we need. Whenever I go to Raleigh, then we're going to have conversations about changing the tax code again to where people pay based upon how much, to whom much is given, much is expected, and they have to take part of that burden.
Okay, I think Mr. Schecter will be up next to start the question. All right. Next question, of course, you've talked about, you mentioned taking back seats in Raleigh. This seat's currently held, and hopefully lightning won't strike it, by Larry Pittman. And not very good judge. But Larry Pittman's had some things that I'm sure most of you in this room would agree that have been failings. What do you see as those failings, and how can you do better?
Well, of the three of us here, I probably know Larry Pittman the best. I've had dealings with Larry. I remember first time I read your newspaper, there was a letter from Larry Pittman. It said, my son was in the 3rd grade and still couldn't read. I'm against public education for that reason, he said. Now, of course, as a counselor, I used to say to all the parents, get in the game. Don't just send your kid to school and expect him to become Einstein when he returns. You must be in the game. Larry Pittman has no regard for public education. I still remember in 2011 when Larry Pittman said we should bring back public executions and hold them right downtown Concord. And the first people to be publicly executed would be doctors who perform abortions. He said that. Now think about that. He's advocating hanging somebody who hasn't committed a crime. Imagine trying to deal with that mindset. Guns. Any gun for anyone with no licenses, background checks, or permits. This is what we're up against with Larry Pittman. Thank you.
Well, Larry Pittman needs to come home. The biggest concern I have with Larry Pittman is that he actually does speak for his constituents, but that's a small subgroup of who lives in District 83. He's not speaking for all of us. And so I don't appreciate the kinds of things he says. It's an embarrassment to be from Cabarrus County at times. It's an embarrassment to be from North Carolina at times when it gets national news about the kinds of things that he says. I even had somebody contact me to help me with my campaign from Seattle, Washington, because they have heard of Larry Pittman and his stance on guns. So you saw, just again, I think it was yesterday or day before, that he has put out a notice that he wants to put guns in schools. I say that we need to arm our teachers with supplies and with textbooks and with technology, not guns. We don't need guns in the hands of civilians. I used to, in my old job at Mecklenburg County, I would coordinate active shooter training. No one recommends putting guns in the hands of civilians. It ends up meaning more people get killed. So Larry's ideas and the things that he is advocating for a minority of the people who live in 83, and we need to take that seat back. Thank you.
I want to make it perfectly clear that my campaign is not about Larry Pittman. My campaign and my vision is focused on the people of House District 83. But with that said, fun fact, Larry Pittman and I are both from New Bern, North Carolina. Who knew? And you would think with that beautiful little town and the salt air and the rivers and all the peace and love that I experienced there, that Larry would have gotten some of that too. Larry operates from a position of fear, and I operate from a position of freedom. And that is a significant difference that informs everything that I do and has, I believe, informed everything that he does. You need an arsenal of weapons when you're afraid. You need to hate people who look and think differently than you if you're afraid. And Larry tends to retreat into his corner with his people and blows off a lot of steam. Where I tend to lean in and go out, and sometimes I blow off a little steam too, but I tend to do it in a different way. Larry's not level-headed. He continuously has to apologize for his behavior and his language, even exploding on the legislative floor. I am cool, calm, and collected, and that's what I'll take to the General Assembly.
First month in office. What do you plan to do? What committees do you want to be on?
Well, the first month in office, there would be, I think, a lot to learn from the state legislature. I would be trying to make inroads with people who have like-minded positions. I would try to begin to build the allegiances that I needed in order for us to make the changes that I think are important that I'm running on. I would also begin to talk to the people back here and try to get our community leaders and our elected officials together to talk about what are the priorities for District 83. So for me, the first is building those relationships and trying to make sure that I understand how to make change happen. There's always an official way to make change happen, and then there's the people who know how to make things happen. And I would need to learn how it is that they operate to be effective as a legislator. The committees that I would like to work on, I would love to work on a gerrymandering committee, but I don't think they have one. Or one with voter rights, I don't think they have that either. So from my perspective, I'd love to work on something that's in education, or I would like to work on healthcare. I would like to work on veterans. I think that the veterans issues that I see happening at the federal level, I see cuts to programs for veterans. And I think if that happens, then we really have to pick up the slack in North Carolina. Veterans deserve to be taken care of because they've given so much.
I've always found in my,
Is that right?
I'm not sure. Just go ahead. We'll do. No, you're good. Go ahead. Go ahead. That's all right.
I've always found in the various jobs I've had that the first month, of course, is a learning experience. And, of course, on some jobs, I was just thrown to the wolves. When I was an investigator for the Office of Probation, they just said, okay, start interviewing these people and make your recommendations to the judge. That was the first day, no training. Somehow, after a month, I became acclimated, I was good at it. But the first month really is difficult. People always say to me, how could you have all these jobs, you know? How'd you learn? On-the-job training the first month. As far as committees, again, public education, very important to me. Veterans issues, I'm a veteran, probably the only veteran here, maybe. Every Tuesday morning, we meet at Carm's Coffee Shop downtown on Union Street, just veterans. It's only open for veterans at 8:30 in the morning every Tuesday. And I know the issues that concern all the veterans, including me. I'm also a member of the NAACP. I'm on the executive board. I interplay and interchange with various groups of people, and therefore I know what this county is thinking about.
Well, the General Assembly likes to put their freshmen through the paces. It's a little bit like hazing. So I imagine the first thing I'm going to do is have to clean out my little closet in the basement. That would be my office. But the way I look at it is, it's going to be the best closet they've ever seen. I will develop relationships, but I want to let you know that I'm not thinking about developing relationships when I get there. I decided to start forming those relationships when I formed a committee. So I have been fortunate enough to find 15 other women who are like-minded powerhouses that are running for office across North Carolina, and we formed a little group. We have been lifting each other up, we've been supporting each other, we've been training up each other with all of our areas of expertise. So when I go in there, I already have friends. I already have smart friends that are ready to hit the ground running. But I've also started seeking out mentors. Mentoring is incredibly important, and I have developed relationships with sitting members of the House and Senate so that I will have the support I need to get up to speed quickly and to be effective in my first year. I don't want to burn that first year. So that's what I'm going to do. Thank you.
We're gonna go off book here just real quick. This is going to be a quick answer, so just pass it down quick. We'll start with you, Ms. Andrews. This is going to be fun. Last book, last movie, last restaurant, or last store you visited. Pick one and tell us what it is and hand it down the line.
Oh, pick one.
Pick one. Pick one. Tell us
Oh
what
my
you want.
gosh. I thought I was gonna have to do all of them. The last restaurant would probably be Troutman's Barbecue. I love barbecue. Eastern North Carolina barbecue is still my favorite. But I gotta tell you, Troutman's is pretty darn good.
All right, let's move next down the line.
Oh, let's see. I went to see A Wrinkle in Time as a movie because I loved the book when I was a child, and I wanted to see how that was translated to the large screen. So I'm a real fan for movies, and that's one of the ways I relax. And so A Wrinkle in Time.
As a historian of the 30s and 40s, the last book I read was B.H. Little Hart on World War II. Very informative.
All right, we're going to move into the closing segment now. Each person will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Ms. Young, we will start with you, and then we'll come to Ms. Andrews, then Mr. Schecter. Okay?
Okay. Just to say, I also have some relationships already established with people in the house that I could hit the ground running. So just wanted to add that. I am the oldest of 4 children. My parents were lower middle class, according to my mom, and that we lived in, and were fortunate to live and be able to survive on my father's salary, which I think, once again, is hard to do in today's world. So I'm also very, very motivated by my faith, and those are the 2 key aspects of my past that I'll highlight. What I want to say to you most is I don't think Larry Pittman does a good job of representing our community. And I think it's time that we actually have someone who listens to the voters and who takes the concerns that we have and tries to make things work better for the district, people in our district. My pledge to you is that if you send me, then I will continue to have those relationships with our city and county officials. I've already had some conversations also with our community leaders and attending some of the meetings that they have and understanding what the issues are with their community. And I will keep an office here in Concord. And my reason for that is this past year I've spent a lot of time traveling back and forth to Raleigh. It's about a 2.5-hour trip down there for about a 15-minute conversation. So I've had that experience with Mr. Pittman and with our others. So I want it to be easy for people to come and talk with me and to share the concerns and for us to get together as a community and understand what District 83 needs so that I am an informed advocate for what needs to change and how I need to represent you. Oh,
It's fine. It's fine.
No, we'll
Okay.
come this way.
I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with everyone tonight in an open and public forum. This is the cornerstone of our democracy, and I'm so happy that we were able to do this. I have no idea, nor do I care, whether you have an R, a D, or a U behind your name. What I want you to know about me is that I'm a wife and a mother and a psychologist and an educator, and I've been on the front lines in District 83, not in other states, not in other cities or counties, but here with the people of District 83. I've been on the front line with education and our jobs crisis through my work at Roe and Cabarrus. I have been on the front line in the emergency room conducting emergency psychiatric evaluations for people who were struggling with mental illness, substance abuse, and sometimes criminal activity and dangerousness to others. And I have been the one that has evaluated the people that threaten to shoot our schools and our public spaces. So I've been very involved and on the front line of this for 22 years. But I've also been a parent volunteer in the public schools, and I'm so proud that my kids are the product of the North Carolina schools. And I've been a resource parent to a child in our North Carolina foster care, and she became our daughter. And so I've been inside some of these systems that are broken, and I understand the issues that create loopholes for people to slip through the cracks. I believe that I am poised to make a difference, but I need your help. I need you to think about whether you want a representative that has learned about the issues in our community, or a representative that understands those issues and has lived them on the front line, fighting for District 83 for 22 years. So I hope that choice will be Senah Andrews at the polls, and I make a commitment that I will fight hard for each and every one of you in the North Carolina General Assembly. Thank you.
2 years ago in 2016, I actually ran against Larry Plemmons. I got almost 18,000 votes, shocked every Democrat. What I realized was many, many Republicans and unaffiliated voters voted for me. I feel I am the strongest candidate in terms of the November election. That's what we have to keep in mind. I think this is very important, and I hope you support me in the primary. I wanted to do some bragging. This is what education can do. This book called Medical Malpractice was written by an economics professor at Duke and my daughter, who is a lawyer. Proud daddy. But this is what education can do. That's about all I have to say. I really think that you should recognize the more experienced person and the person with a varied background. I've been in the trenches. I know how to deal with people. I deal with such diverse people. And of course, in my business background, I was forced to deal with very difficult and diverse people. And I was successful. And I really would hope that you would understand this and support me.
I think we've wrapped it up. We've finished this on the dot of 7:56. So a good job for all the candidates.
So we had asked for a request for questions from the community. We got some late because I had a commitment to Mark to get them to him ahead of time, and there was more questions than we had time. So if you have questions that weren't answered here today, you can write them down, and I can make sure that the candidates reach out to you and talk to you. Or I can, I'm sure, we're about to have a 15-minute intervention. Intervention.
We have an intervention.
It feels like I need an intervention, and feel free to talk to the candidates there too. So before we do that, Andrew, who's first vice chair, just has one real quick thing to say to you guys, and then we can stretch legs and swap out candidates.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for coming. If you would please, if you're interested in joining our email list or volunteering as we move towards winning in November, we have sign-in sheets by the door. This is going to be a tough fight this year. Regardless of who wins the primary, democracy is a contact sport, and we need to take the field. So that's my one sports analogy for the day. I promise that'll be it.